My name is Lauren Parker, and I'm 38 years old. If you'd asked me a month ago how my marriage was, I would have said, solid, a little stressed, but solid. The kind of answer you give with a tired smile and a sip of lukewarm office coffee. Now? Now my marriage is a trending topic on Reddit, and my husband turned me into a villain for 10,000 strangers. It started on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of gray workday that feels like it's stuck on loop. I was in the break room at lunch, scrolling through emails with one hand and poking at microwave leftovers with the other, when my coworker Jake slid into the seat across from me. "You've got to read this," he said, shoving his phone toward me with a grin. "Some relationship advice post. People are wild." I almost didn't look. I was tired. My head was already full of budgets and deadlines and the project I was trying to pull back from the brink. But I glanced down anyway. The title on his screen read, "My wife is useless and broke, but expects me to bankroll her life." My stomach gave a weird little lurch. The username was generic, one of those throwaway things, but I didn't see that first. I saw the details underneath. Married, late 30s, engineering project manager wife, mediocre apartment, mediocre SUV, a recent argument about a girls' weekend and saving for a house. I felt the blood drain from my face so fast my ears buzzed. Jake chuckled, completely oblivious. Can you imagine being married to someone like that? Dude's getting roasted in the comments, though. People are telling him to leave her. I kept my face neutral. Years of professional composure training kicked in like muscle memory. "People really will post anything for attention," I said lightly, pushing my fork through rice I suddenly couldn't swallow. He laughed, tucked his phone away, and changed the subject. I nodded in the right places and finished lunch on autopilot, my heart pounding in this dull, relentless thud. The second I got back to my desk, I pulled out my own phone under the guise of checking messages and opened Reddit. There it was. Same title, same post, same life. Just that in his version, I was a leech. My wife, late 30s, is completely dead weight. She works an okay job, but never has money for anything fun. He wrote about the spa weekend I'd mentioned, how I wanted to go away with my friends for 2 days. He said I threw a fit when he reminded me we needed to save for a house. He called our apartment mediocre, our car mediocre, our life mediocre, all because I supposedly refused to budget. The part that really got me, though, was this line. "I'm starting to think I married a broke loser who's holding me back from the life I deserve." I stared at that sentence until the words blurred. My reflection stared back at me in the black edge of the screen. Messy bun, faint circles under my eyes, badge lanyard crooked on my blazer. A broke loser who'd wired the rent that morning before work. I scrolled down. 10,000 upvotes. Hundreds and hundreds of comments. "Girl, run! He's financially abusing you by controlling spending. He sounds threatened by your success." Except in this version, he was the beleaguered husband, and I was the selfish, useless wife. I wanted to throw up. I forced myself to breathe and do what I do at work when a project explodes. Gather data. Facts. I opened my banking app with shaking fingers. I make $89,000 a year as an engineering project manager. After taxes and deductions, that comes out to about $5,400 a month. Ethan, my husband, works in marketing at a mid-sized firm. He brings in around $52,000 a year. Not bad money. We're both doing okay. Our mediocre apartment costs $2,400 a month. I pay $1,900 of it automatically every first of the month. Ethan sends me $500 when he remembers, which is usually after I remind him twice. The mediocre SUV he said he bought? My name is the only one on the title. It took me 2 years of aggressive saving and a lot of saying no to myself to walk into that dealership and pay cash. There's an older sedan in the garage in his name. He hardly drives it. The credit card he uses for everything? The one he said he covers when he can? That's my account. He's an authorized user. I've been paying the balance in full every month. $1,200, $1,500, sometimes more. Groceries, dinners with his friends, random Amazon orders that just appear on the doorstep like plastic mushrooms. His student loans? I have been making the payments for 3 years so he could focus on his career. I scrolled back up to the post and read it again, line by line, feeling like I was watching someone rewrite my life with a spiteful pen. He didn't lie outright. That's what made it worse. He just tilted everything. Left out all the parts where I was quietly covering the gap between our incomes and his lifestyle. The part where I wired money to his account the night his car broke down. The part where I paid off his emergency room bill. The part where I said, "Don't worry, I've got it." So many times it became a reflex. I'd always told myself that's what you do when you love someone. I hadn't realized that somewhere along the way, he'd decided that was his due. 20 minutes passed, maybe 30. I couldn't tell. My inbox pinged and my monitor slept and the world went on as normal while I sat there at my desk, reading strangers tell my husband to leave me. A comment caught my eye, buried under the top drama. This sounds a lot like my ex, honestly. He left out a lot when he talked about money. Spoiler, it wasn't his wife who was the problem. The username made my chest tighten. Marissa Once Upon a Time. I knew that name. Ethan's ex-girlfriend. The one he dated in his 20s. The one who, according to him, had never supported his dreams and only cared about money. He'd told me once, in an offhand way, that she'd accused him of wanting a woman to sponsor his life. He'd laughed like it was ridiculous. Back then, I'd laughed with him. My hands stopped shaking. For the first time since I'd seen the post, I felt something cut through the nausea. A thin, sharp line of anger. Clean, steady, almost cold. He'd made this public. I could make it accurate. I created a new account. It took 5 minutes. I wasn't clever about the username. I didn't need to be. I clicked into the comment box and started typing. Hey, OP's wife here. I laid out the numbers. Not in a rage, not with name-calling, just facts. The rent split, the car title, the credit card he used that was actually mine, the student loans I'd been paying, the joint savings account that was 90% my deposits, 10% his, the vacations he bragged about that I'd funded while he Venmo'd me back a token amount to contribute. I ended it with this. You're right about one thing, though. You are broke, not because I'm draining you, but because I've been quietly funding your life for years while you went to the internet to call me useless. Good news. I just removed you as an authorized user on my card. You're welcome to pay for your own fun now. Good luck with the spa weekend I supposedly ruined. I hit post. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, like I'd just run a sprint down the emergency stairwell. Then I opened another tab, my credit card account. 3 clicks, and Ethan Parker vanished from the authorized users list. I called the company and had them cancel his physical card. Anything else we can help you with today? The rep asked. I stared at the numbers on the screen. Our balance, our payment history, the quiet, invisible trail of the life I'd been paying for. No, I said, that's it. When I got home, I cooked dinner like nothing had happened. The apartment felt different, though, quieter. The walls seemed to hold their breath with me. Ethan walked in around 7, dropping his bag by the door like always, kissing my cheek in this automatic, distracted way. He complained about a client, asked what smelled good, rummaged through the cabinets for snacks. I ladled pasta into bowls and watched him move around our kitchen, the kitchen I'd chosen, in the apartment I paid for. How was your day? He asked, finally sitting down. Busy, I said. Yours? Same, he said, already scrolling on his phone. People online are insane. I almost laughed. It took about an hour for it to hit. I was on the couch with a book when I heard him yell my name from the bedroom. The sound clawed straight down my spine. Lauren, what the hell is this? I marked my page, set the book down, and walked back, my heart oddly calm. He was standing in the doorway, phone in hand, face flushed a furious red. Did you comment on my post? He demanded. I tilted my head. Which post? You know which? He stopped, jaw clenching. Don't play dumb. The Reddit post. About us. Oh, I said. The one where you called me a useless, broke loser to 10,000 people? Yeah, I saw it. His eyes bugged. You had no right to do that. That was private venting. In what universe is Reddit private? I asked softly. You wrote 1,000 words about our marriage and finances and posted them for strangers to judge. You left out half the story. I just filled in the blanks. They're turning on me now, he snapped, waving the phone. Do you see this? They're calling me entitled. They're saying I used you. They're reading facts, I said. If that makes you look bad, that's not my fault. His gaze sharpened, like he'd just remembered something. Did you cancel my card? Yes. You can't do that. I already did. How am I supposed to pay for anything, Lauren? He shouted. I was at the gas station and it got declined. I looked like an idiot. You have your own cards, I said. Use those. They're maxed out, he blurted, then bit his lip like he wished he could take it back. I just looked at him. There it was. All the quiet math I'd been doing alone for years, finally saying itself out loud. That sounds like a budgeting problem, I said, my voice strangely gentle. His hands shook. This is financial abuse. You can't just cut me off like that. I'm your husband. No, I said, feeling something in me settle, hard and clear. This is me stopping your financial abuse. I've been your personal ATM for 3 years while you told the internet I'm dragging you down. He stared at me, breathing hard. For the first time since I'd known him, I saw it, the flash of calculation behind his anger, the moment he realized I wasn't bluffing. "You're going to regret this," he said finally. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. Right then, all I felt was the strangest, quietest thing. Relief. Maybe, I said. We'll see. I picked up my book and went back to the couch while he paced the bedroom, refreshing a thread full of strangers who finally knew my side of the story. The post got deleted around 10 that night, but the internet is forever, and so are bank statements. The morning after the Reddit post disappeared, the apartment felt like a hangover. Not the fun kind where you at least have blurry memories of good decisions. The kind where you remember every word you said and every word someone said about you, and they all echo in your skull. Ethan barely looked at me while we got ready for work. He moved around the bedroom with clipped, jerky motions, yanking drawers open, slamming them shut, muttering under his breath. I poured coffee like it was any other day. "You're really not going to say anything?" he snapped finally, shoving his arms into his jacket. I glanced up. "About what?" "Oh, I don't know, Lauren," he said, throwing his hands up. "Maybe about how you turned the internet against me?" I took a slow sip of coffee. "You turned the internet against yourself. I just added the parts you skipped." "You humiliated me," he said. "My coworkers saw that thread. My boss follows that subreddit. Do you have any idea?" "I found out about the post because my coworker showed it to me at lunch," I cut in. "So yes, Ethan, I have an idea." We stared at each other across the kitchen counter, two people who shared a lease, a bed, a bank account, and absolutely no shared version of reality. He looked away first. "This isn't over," he muttered, grabbing his keys. He was halfway to his door when he stopped short and patted his pockets, frowning. "Where's my card?" I didn't answer. He checked again, opened his wallet, flipped through it. "Did you take my card?" "I canceled my card," I corrected. "The one with my name on it that you used." He glared. "Same difference." "No," I said, "it really isn't." He left without saying goodbye, the door slamming so hard the frame rattled. For a few minutes, I just stood there in the quiet kitchen, fingers wrapped around my mug, watching the way the early light pooled on the floorboards. My heart was beating fast, but there was a strange stillness under it, like the moment right before a storm hits and the air goes heavy. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't need to see the caller ID to know who it was. "Hello?" I answered. "How dare you?" a woman's voice hissed. "How dare you do that to my son?" "Good morning to you too, Carol," I said. Ethan's mother didn't bother with pleasantries. She never had. "He is devastated," she said. "He called me last night in tears. Do you know what you've done?" I sat down at the table. I responded to a post where your son called me a broke loser to 10,000 strangers. With facts. "He was venting," she snapped. "People vent online. It doesn't mean anything." "Funny," I said. "That's exactly what the comments told him about me, except I never got to tell my side until yesterday." "You made him look like a leech," she said, voice rising. "You made him look like some kind of parasite living off you." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Carol, I sent him screenshots of our bank transfers a dozen times. I've paid nearly 80% of our rent since we moved in. I paid for the car. I pay for his loans, his emergencies, his—" "As his wife," she cut in sharply. "That's what a good wife does. Supports her husband." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "So when does a good husband start supporting his wife?" There was a beat of stunned silence on the other end, like she'd never even considered the question. "This isn't about that," she said, recovering. "This is about you making him look bad." "He made me look bad first," I said softly. "I just stopped covering for him." "You are destroying your own marriage over money," she said, each word hard and cold. "Over a stupid website." "No," I said. "He destroyed it when he weaponized strangers instead of talking to me." "Think about what you're doing," she warned. "He will always be my son. You can be replaced." I don't know what I expected her to say, but that landed like a stone. "I know," I said quietly. "I'm starting to understand that." I hung up before she could respond because if I stayed on the line 1 second longer, I was going to say something I couldn't take back. My hands were trembling when I set the phone down. I opened my banking app again. The joint savings account stared back at me. $15,400 on my side. Around $1,200 from Ethan. Sporadic $50 and $100 transfers when he had extra. I remembered every story that went with those deposits. The raises I didn't fully celebrate because I immediately funneled them into that account. The nights I said no to dinner out with friends because we're saving for a house. The small luxuries I talked myself out of because we need a future. I initiated a transfer. 15,000 out. New account. My name only. I left his 1200 sitting there like a marker. Evidence. A little monument to who really built what. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't Carol. It was my friend Kayla. Hey, did Ethan call you yet? I blinked. About what? I typed back. There was a pause, then my screen lit up with a flood of screenshots. Not just of the original thread, but of a new one. Someone had posted a recap on a different subreddit, summarizing Ethan's post and my response, laying out the numbers in neat bullet points and asking, so, who's actually the problem here? 25,000 upvotes, hundreds of comments. OP sounds like he's been living on easy mode and his wife finally hit pause. He left out a lot in the original story. Good for her. I would divorce someone who lied about me like that online, honestly. I scrolled, numb, until I reached a comment from a familiar username. Marissa the Once Upon a Time Again. Dated a guy just like this. Swore his ex never supported his dreams while she was as quietly paying all the bills. Some men don't want partners. They want patrons. My chest tightened. It felt like someone had opened the window and let cold air rush straight through me. Kayla's messages kept coming. Ethan called me bawling about how you cut him off financially and turned all of Reddit against him. He wanted me to back him up if people asked. Said you've always been controlling with money. I told him that's not what I've seen. I swallowed. What have you seen? I typed. I've seen you pay every time we go out. I've seen him forget his wallet more than any grown man should. I've seen him brag about the travel and the car like he earned it. I'm sorry, Laura. I should have said something sooner. I stared at that last line for a long time. I'd been so busy making sure Ethan never felt small, never felt less than, that I hadn't realized how small I'd become in my own story, how invisible. The group chat we shared with mutual friends was a wildfire. I clicked it open and watched the messages fly. Some people defended him. She embarrassed him publicly. She could have just talked to him privately. Others pushed back. He embarrassed her first. If he didn't want to be called out, he shouldn't have lied. Someone dropped the recap thread link. The chat went quiet for a few seconds. Then, yeah, no, I'm with Lauren on this. This is beyond venting. This is character assassination. By noon, Ethan had left the group chat. By 2, he'd started another one without me, which I knew only because a mutual friend accidentally sent a screenshot to the wrong thread. The new chat name was The Real Story, which would have been funny if it hadn't been so pathetic. He spent the afternoon painting himself as the victim. I skimmed the leaked messages in disbelief. She's punishing me for telling the truth. She's trying to control me. She's always been weird about money. Weird about money. I thought about the way my stomach used to clench each time the rent reminder popped up, knowing I'd cover it whether his portion came in or not. The way I'd learned to check my accounts twice before saying yes to something small for myself, like a manicure or a new pair of boots, because there was always another unexpected bill in his name floating toward me. If that was weird about money, maybe I should have been weirder. When I got home that evening, the apartment felt different again. Not tense exactly, just thinner. Ethan was already there, sitting at the table with his laptop open and his phone face up beside it. He looked up when I walked in. We need to talk, he said. There it was, the phrase no one ever uses for good news. I hung up my coat, set my bag down, and sat across from him. Okay, talk. You're transferring money out of our savings, he said without preamble. I got an alert. Our savings, I repeated. You mean the account where I put in 15,000 and you put in 1,200? It's still joint, he snapped. You can't just strip it like that. I transferred what I contributed, I said calmly. Your contribution is still there. You're welcome to move it wherever you like. His jaw clenched. You're punishing me. No, I said. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. He stared at me like he'd never really seen me before, like the version of Lauren in his head. Soft, accommodating, endlessly understanding. Had been replaced by a stranger overnight. You're throwing away our marriage over online drama, he said finally. I thought of Jake's laughing face in the break room, of thousands of strangers reading a story where I was lazy, selfish, a burden, of my own husband choosing karma farming over a hard conversation at our own kitchen table. Our marriage didn't end online, I said quietly. It ended when you decided humiliating me was easier than talking to me. He scoffed. Oh, save the dramatic monologue. I let the jab roll off. I think we need help, I said. A neutral third party. Counseling. He blinked, clearly not expecting that. Counseling? Yes, I said, with someone who can look at the situation without Reddit and your mother in their ear. He hesitated, then slowly he nodded. Fine, he said. I'll find someone, but you're not touching anything else until then. I didn't bother responding to that, because as he spoke, something flickered across my mind, uninvited but bright and sharp. A word I'd never let myself think in relation to us before. Divorce. The word sat there between us like a third-place setting at the table, invisible but very, very real. Ethan launched back into a speech about perspective and how things look, but his voice faded to background noise as my thoughts drifted. I remembered the night he'd told me about Marissa, how she'd given up on him and refused to believe in his potential, how he'd said, half joking, that he just needed one woman in his life who believed enough to sponsor the dream. I'd laughed then and said, "You don't need a sponsor. You need a partner." I wondered when exactly he'd stopped hearing the difference. He was still talking when I stood up. "I have to finish something for work," I said. "We can look at counseling options later." He scowled. "This isn't over." He was right. It wasn't. It was just starting to unravel. The next morning, the apartment felt like two people living parallel lives in the same square footage. Ethan was already awake, pacing the living room with his phone pressed to his ear. I heard the tight, strained tone he only used with his mother. "She made me look like a freeloader, Mom." "No, you don't understand. Reddit thinks I'm... Mom, will you just listen?" He paused, then turned his back when he noticed me in the doorway, like shielding the conversation would somehow prevent me from hearing the blame. I made coffee, quietly, deliberately, the sound of the spoon stirring louder than it needed to be. He hung up without looking at me, slipped past me, didn't say good morning. We were becoming shadows in each other's routines. I tried to bury myself in work that day, but my phone kept buzzing every few hours with some new fallout of Ethan's online confession and my factual correction. At noon, a text from my landlord. "Hi, Lauren. Just a reminder, we're still short $500 on this month's rent. Wanted to double-check that everything's okay." I stared at the screen, feeling the familiar, exhausted tug of choosing between paying his share again or letting him face the consequence he'd earned. For the first time in years, I chose the latter. I didn't respond. I didn't even forward it. If Ethan wanted independence so badly, he could start with the bills. Around 2, my phone rang. Ethan's name flashing across the screen. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, a text came through instead. "Why didn't you tell the landlord? He called me. There's a $75 late fee. Fix it." Fix it. Even now. I typed back, "Your half-deal is your responsibility. Pay it." After several minutes, 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. Whatever, I'll take care of it. I pictured him calling his mother again, because that's what he did whenever he needed money, but didn't want to use his own. Carol always swooped in with some dramatic lecture about how a good wife supports her husband before transferring him the exact amount he needed. 3 years of that, and somehow I was the controlling one. At 3, I got a message from Kayla again. "Heads up! Ethan's been calling everyone we know. Says you blindsided him. Says you've always been controlling about finances." Then another. People aren't buying it, especially after seeing the numbers. Another friend chimed in privately. He asked me to say I've witnessed you financially isolating him. What does that even mean? I told him absolutely not. And another. "I think he's unraveling, Lore. He's saying you ruined his reputation, but he posted it first." I closed my eyes, leaning back in my office chair, letting the tiredness wash over me. I hadn't ruined anything. He had simply been seen, not the curated version of himself, the one who always had big dreams but waited for someone else to make them possible, but the real version. The version who lived off other people's effort and then resented them for it. And once the internet caught a whiff of that truth, there was no stuffing it back into the box. When I went home that evening, Ethan's car, the old sedan, not the SUV, wasn't in its usual spot. The SUV was still parked where I left it. Inside, he was sitting on the couch with his arms folded, his expression sour and pinched. "We need a system," he announced the second I walked through the door. "Clear rules, so you don't keep pulling stunts." He couldn't even say consequences, or boundaries, or my fair share. No, it was stunts. "Okay," I said, hanging up my coat. "What kind of system are you thinking about?" He puffed up, relieved I wasn't fighting. "We split everything 50-50. Rent, utilities, car maintenance, groceries, everything. Like roommates." Roommates. He said it like he was the one proposing something radical. But the truth was, his suggestion was the first logical thought he'd expressed in weeks. "Fine," I said. His eyebrows shot up. "Fine?" "Yes," I said. "If we're roommates, we act like roommates. Rent transferred separately, groceries individually purchased, insurance separate, cars separate, no shared credit cards, no subsidizing. He blinked, thrown off by how quickly I agreed. I continued, but if we're doing this, it's in writing, an actual agreement, no more gray areas. He scoffed as if offended by professionalism in a marriage he'd publicly torched. But he didn't argue. I sat down at the table and opened my laptop, drafting a simple, clean spreadsheet that listed every monthly expense. Rent, $2,400. His portion, $1,200. My portion, $1,200. Utilities, $200. His, $100. Mine, $100. Internet, $100. His, $50. Mine, $50. Groceries, separate transportation, separate credit cards, separate. When I slid the laptop toward him, he stared at the numbers like they were written in blood. You expect me to pay this every month? He asked, voice cracking slightly. Yes, I said. I don't make as much as you, he snapped. No, I said, you don't. But you do make enough to cover your share of your own life. That sentence landed like a brick. I could practically see the impact in his posture. He signed the agreement anyway, because his alternatives were move out, go to counseling, admit he couldn't afford to function without me. He didn't like any of those options. After he signed, he shoved the laptop back toward me like it had insulted him. This isn't how marriage works, he muttered. No, I said, it isn't. He blinked. I let that hang for a moment. Then, quietly, because we're not a marriage anymore, Ethan. Not the way we're living. He swallowed, eyes darting away. I have a counseling appointment Thursday, he announced abruptly, with Dr. Kemp. She's highly recommended. I nodded. Send me the info. He did. That night, I sat on the couch and Googled her. Specializes in helping men recover from financial abuse and manipulation. Most clients are men who felt controlled by higher-earning partners. Wrote 3 articles on the dangers of financially dominant wives. I stared at the screen. It wasn't counseling. It was strategy. Ethan wasn't looking for help. He was looking for an ally to validate his narrative. I closed the tab. At 9, he emerged from the bedroom. You're coming Thursday, he said, more command than request. I closed my book slowly. No, I said. He blinked. What? I'm not walking into a biased, predetermined session where the goal is to prove I'm the villain you already painted me as. He scoffed. So you refuse counseling? I refuse that counselor, I said. I'll go to neutral counseling. Someone trained to help both partners. And who picks this neutral therapist? You? If you want, I said. Or we can pick together. He crossed his arms. This is exactly what I mean. You need everything to be your way. I let out a breath. I need fairness, that's all. He went quiet, staring at me, searching for a comeback. When he found none, he turned away. That night, I slept on the edge of the bed while he lay stiffly beside me, both of us pretending the gulf between us wasn't widening by the hour. The next morning, I woke to a notification. A text from one of my closest friends. Lauren, I think you need to know this. Ethan asked me to lie to the counselor he picked. He wanted me to say I've seen you controlling him financially. I told him absolutely not. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I stared at the text. The tiredness left my body slowly, replaced by something cleaner, sharper. Not anger. Not even sadness. Clarity. Because in that moment, every red flag I'd brushed aside for years lit up in a single bright line. Ethan didn't just want to be believed. He wanted me to be condemned. And he was willing to recruit people to do it. That was the moment I knew the roommate agreement was temporary. The counseling would be a formality. The marriage? Already over. He just hadn't realized it yet. Ethan spent the next few days behaving like a man waiting for a verdict. Quiet enough to be suspicious, polite enough to be performative, careful enough to tell me he knew he was on thin ice, but not careful enough to actually change. On Tuesday night, he came home with takeout, pad thai from the place I liked, and set it on the table like a peace offering. I figured you didn't feel like cooking, he said lightly, the smile just a bit too rehearsed. I thanked him because politeness costs nothing, but I didn't let the warmth soften anything. My walls were up now, and he could feel it. While we ate in uneasy silence, he casually dropped, My mom thinks we should reconsider therapy. I almost laughed. His mother was the last person whose opinions I wanted shaping our marriage. So do I said. Real therapy, not the one-sided version. His jaw ticked, but he nodded. Fine, pick your neutral therapist. I already did. That caught him off guard. Really? Yes. I slid my phone across the table. I'd booked an appointment with a highly reviewed couples counselor, someone with no predictable bias, no blog posts about oppressed husbands, no prepackaged narrative. He skimmed the link. This person specializes in financial conflict in marriages, he said slowly. Yes, I said, which seems appropriate. He didn't argue, but I watched something flicker behind his eyes. A tightening, a calculation. He was realizing this wouldn't be easy for him. He was realizing a professional might confirm the truth he refused to face. The day of the appointment, he dressed too sharply. New shirt, expensive cologne, hair styled with extra gel. It was the outfit he wore when he wanted to project responsibility he didn't actually practice. He was 15 minutes late picking me up. When he finally arrived, he had the nerve to blame traffic, even though the map app showed green the entire route. I didn't fight it. I didn't give him the power of reaction. We drove in silence. When we reached the office, his foot tapped anxiously the whole elevator ride up. I walked in calm, controlled, steady, because everything I needed to say was fact, not emotion. The counselor, Dr. Harper, greeted us warmly, a neutral woman in her 50s with soft voice and sharper eyes. She motioned for us to sit. So, she said after a moment, tell me what brings you both here. Ethan leapt in. She humiliated me online. I blinked once. The therapist held up a gentle hand. Let's start at the beginning. Ethan, give me your perspective. Then Lauren will give hers. He nodded quickly, like he'd been waiting for that cue. And then he launched. A 10-minute diatribe about how I cut him off financially without warning, how I made Reddit think he was leeching, how I weaponized income against him, and how he felt attacked, both publicly and at home. He used all the buzzwords, all the phrases Carol liked, all the lines he'd practiced in the mirror, no doubt. He painted himself as terrified, wronged, overwhelmed. I let him finish every word. When he finally stopped, breathing hard, Dr. Harper turned to me. Lauren? I opened my phone, pulled up a folder labeled documentation, and handed it to her. Here, I said simply, these are screenshots of the original Reddit post Ethan wrote about me, and underneath that, my comment with factual corrections. Dr. Harper scrolled. Then I handed her 3 printed pages. These are bank statements of the last year, I said. They show that I paid roughly 80% of our living expenses. I also covered his student loans, his credit card balances, and most shared costs. More pages. These are the titles for the cars. Mine is paid off and insured by me. His is insured sporadically and lapsed for nearly 8 months. More. This is the joint savings account history. My contributions total $15,200. His equal approximately $1,200. Dr. Harper raised her eyebrows very slightly, the only sign of surprise. And, I finished, this is a message from a friend confirming Ethan asked her to lie to a counselor about me being financially controlling. Ethan's head snapped toward me. You weren't supposed to show that. It's evidence, I said calmly. The counselor set the papers down and folded her hands. Ethan, she said evenly, are these numbers accurate? He fumbled. It's more complicated. How so? She pressed, still gentle, still neutral. He swallowed. She makes more money. Obviously, she should pay more. Was this discussed or agreed on? He hesitated. We didn't need to discuss it. That's just how it worked. So Lauren unilaterally paid significantly more, Dr. Harper clarified, while you spent the majority of your income on yourself? He opened his mouth, closed it, reopened it. That's not fair, he managed. I contributed emotionally. I supported her in other ways. In your Reddit post, the therapist said, picking up the paper, you called her a broke loser holding you back. Ethan flushed. That was just venting. The therapist glanced at me. Lauren, how did you feel reading that? I breathed slowly. It felt like betrayal, I said. Not because of the insults. Those were immature, but because he created a public narrative where I'm selfish and he's the victim, while I've quietly been carrying most of our weight financially for years. Ethan scoffed. Carrying? Really? The therapist shot him a warning look. Let her finish. I didn't respond online out of revenge, I said softly. I responded because thousands of people were judging me without the truth, and because the man I loved stripped away my dignity publicly. Silence. A long, heavy silence. After several seconds, Dr. Harper spoke quietly. Ethan, it appears your experience of financial imbalance is the opposite of the factual reality. That's your interpretation, he snapped. No, she said gently. That's what your own financial documents show. This isn't interpretation. He stood up abruptly. I'm not doing this, he said. You're taking her side. I'm taking the side of what the evidence demonstrates, she corrected. He grabbed his jacket. This is ridiculous. We're done here. He walked out. The door closed behind him with a thud. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Dr. Harper looked at me with quiet sympathy. I'm sorry he left, though his reaction speaks volumes. I nodded. Lauren, she said gently, I'm not here to push you, but I think you already know this relationship is deeply imbalanced and emotionally unsafe. My eyes burned unexpectedly, a sting behind my lashes. Not grief, not heartbreak. Recognition. Yes, I whispered. I know. 3 days later, I filed for divorce. Ethan was served at work. He called me in a panic, alternating between anger, tears, and guilt-tripping. You're throwing away everything. You're killing me financially. You're supposed to support me. You can't do this without talking to me. You owe me another chance. I listened to all of it, and when he finally ran out of words, I said, Ethan, I supported you for years, financially, emotionally, in ways you never even noticed. What I won't do anymore is support a version of you that hurts me. His inhale was shaky. You'll regret this, he whispered. But I wouldn't, because I had already done the hardest part. I stopped believing I needed to rescue him to deserve love. I ended the call. The next morning, divorce paperwork lay folded on the kitchen counter. His signature scrawled at the bottom in angry ink. We still had a month until the lease ended. But emotionally, the marriage had ended the moment he hit post. The last month of living together felt like the longest, strangest transition of my life. We were two people occupying the same space, orbiting each other like planets with incompatible gravity. The air between us was thick with everything we weren't saying, and everything we had already said far too loudly to ever take back. Ethan stayed mostly in the bedroom. I moved most of my things to the living room and slept on the couch, not because he asked me to, but because peace had become more valuable than proximity. The landlord agreed to let one of us take over the lease after the divorce was finalized. I chose to stay. Ethan chose to go. It was the least surprising decision he'd made in months. The divorce. The legal part was almost anticlimactic. Because we'd kept finances semi-separate, and because I had meticulous documentation for every shared expense, every transfer, every loan payment, every screenshot, there wasn't much to fight over. My lawyer skimmed the folder and nodded. This will be straightforward, she said. No kids, no joint major assets, no heavy shared debt except the small savings account. He contributed significantly less. Alimony is highly unlikely. Ethan tried to argue otherwise. He claimed he'd sacrificed career advancement to support the marriage. He claimed he deserved compensation for emotional labor. He claimed he helped with things people don't see. His lawyer looked embarrassed. Mine simply slid forward the spreadsheet, my spreadsheet, with hard numbers and dates. We have receipts, she said gently. And that was the end of that. In the final settlement, the judge ruled, I keep the SUV I paid off. He keeps the older sedan he neglected for years. We split the savings proportionally based on contributions. He walked away with about $6,000. No alimony. Each keeps their own debts. He had $8,000 in credit card debt. I had none. Each retains their own income, accounts, and property. It took 6 weeks start to finish. 6 weeks to dismantle a marriage that had taken years to build, and even longer to see clearly. His mother's final call. 3 days after the judge signed the paperwork, my phone lit up with her name. Carol. Of course. I almost didn't answer. But I did, because some chapters deserve to close with clarity, not silence. She didn't waste time. You've ruined him, she hissed. Are you happy now? I looked out the window of my newly quiet apartment, sunlight pouring in across the hardwood floors, the SUV keys resting on the table beside a cup of tea. I didn't ruin him, I said calmly. I stopped carrying him. He can't afford to live on his own, she snapped. He makes $52,000 a year, I said. He can afford plenty. He can't afford the lifestyle you gave him. There it was. The truth. Not what Ethan wanted, what she wanted, what he'd been raised to expect. A life someone else provides, I said softly. Not a life he builds. You're heartless. No, I said, just done. And then I did what I should have done a long time ago. I blocked her. The aftermath. The first night alone in the apartment felt surreal, quiet, still, almost too still. Then the quiet started feeling good. I bought new pillows, rearranged the furniture, donated the decorations that were his taste, but somehow ended up in my shopping cart and my receipts. I put up a bookshelf I built myself, sturdy and symmetrical, a small rebellion against every time Ethan called my hobbies pointless. Turns out woodworking is a lot more satisfying when no one complains about sawdust. I cooked what I wanted. I ate when I wanted. I stopped waiting for someone to match my effort. With each passing day, the apartment felt more like mine and less like a battleground. The internet never forgets. Every now and then, the Reddit post resurfaces in compilation threads. Remember the guy who called his wife broke and she dropped the receipts? Sometimes there's a TikTok with dramatic music. Sometimes it's a meme. Sometimes it's someone analyzing relationship power dynamics. I don't comment. I don't correct. I don't participate. I don't need to. Ethan, on the other hand, deleted all his social media. He couldn't handle the fact that the persona he curated had cracked open. People weren't mocking him for being broke. They were mocking him for lying about who did the breaking. What I learned that silence is expensive. Every time I covered for him, financially, emotionally, socially, I took on a debt he refused to acknowledge. I learned that generosity becomes exploitation the moment only one partner practices it. I learned that being the strong one in a relationship is admirable until the other person treats your strength as a resource, not a gift. I learned that love without respect becomes obligation. And obligation is a slow, quiet suffocation. Moving forward, I haven't decided if I'll date again. For now, I'm learning how to be alone without being lonely, how to enjoy my own space, my own money, my own life. I took a weekend trip by myself using the money I used to save for emergencies he created. I drove the SUV, my SUV, and didn't once have to worry about someone asking me to Venmo myself back for their portion of the gas. There's peace in that. There's power. There's me again. The final reckoning. Someone once DM'd me on Reddit after recognizing my writing style from a comment thread. They asked, if he apologized, really apologized, would you take him back? I didn't need to think about it. The answer was, and still is, no. Not because I'm bitter, not because I want revenge, not because I hate him, but because even in counseling, even during the divorce, even when faced with evidence stacked like bricks, Ethan never once said, I'm sorry for lying. I'm sorry for using you. I'm sorry for taking advantage of your kindness. I'm sorry for humiliating you. I'm sorry I didn't see what you were giving until it was gone. He wasn't sorry for any of that. He was only sorry he got caught. And regret is not the same as remorse. My closing line. So here I am, living in my peaceful apartment, paying my own bills, growing my savings, rebuilding my life from the inside out. Some days I look around and think, this is the best broke, useless life I've ever had. And the truth is, it's the first time in years I don't feel broke, or useless, or small, or taken for granted. I feel like myself, finally.